Alright everybody, welcome into a new video. Today we're going to learn why you're playing well wrong. Yeah, you have some questions for me, don't you? Let's find out. That's today's video. Alright, let's hop into it. And let's break this down. Alright, hey everybody, welcome to today's video. Today's video, I'm going to explain to you why 90% of the population is playing well wrong. For the last 2 years, since Forsaken come out, we have basically mained Phoenix Protocol well. And I believe in today's meta, and as we head into what will be Solar 3.0 in a couple seasons, and as we head into Witch Queen as a whole for a year, I think we are still looking at, well, the same way we did back in Forsaken. Same way we looked at well back in Shadowkeep. And I think that's a wrong way to look at this tree and this class. First, I want to go ahead and just give everybody an overview in case you're relatively new to the game. A little bit of overview of what's on this tree so you can maybe get a better understanding of how these things behave together. First, we have the super. Will of Radiance is a Tier 5 super as of the 30th anniversary update. Tier 5 supers have the fastest cooldowns in the game. They cool down super quick. The only other super that will be a Tier 5 super is Bubble. And because of this new cooldown change, it makes a situation where, well, even at basically 0 intellect, is still a ridiculously fast cooldown compared to even where it was at one point. We also have to remember that intellect is effectively a useless stat currently. And your bulk of your super cooldown is because of the damage you deal through primary, special, and heavy weapons. The bulk of that being heavy weapon damage. I mean, primary weapon damage. Sorry. And so I think well is better than I think anybody is giving it credit for right now, especially in the PvE world. It's even better than it was, in my opinion. Well heals you repeatedly. It is the only super in the game that if you are getting kills while being inside of, you will not die. Unless you take an absurd amount of burst damage all at once, and the only way to really do that is inside of GM content. And even then, there's very few things, even at the GM level, that will instantly kill you inside of a well. First, on the tree, we have Guiding Flame, which is our melee. The melee gives any allies near you a 15% damage bonus for 5 seconds, I want to say. Might be 10 seconds. I think it's 10 seconds. And that is to you and your allies. Next up, we have Benevolent Dawn, which builds directly into Guiding Flame. When you empower or heal, this is the part that it doesn't say, but when you empower or heal an ally with the melee or the charged grenade, by pressing and holding your grenade button, you grant yourself melee, grenade, and rift energy for as long as the Benevolent Dawn buff is on your screen. This basically makes it so that with something like Boots of the Assembler, you can sit in a rift forever. If you run a Boots of the Assembler with well, you can basically sit in your healing rift forever. Because you'll get your rift back off cooldown before you can even run out of a rift. And that stacks even more on top with Lumina, which will give you your rift and grenade stuff back even faster. Lastly, on the tree, we have Divine Protection, which is how you heal your allies with your grenade. You press and hold your grenade button, no matter which grenade you choose, whether you choose the Solars, the Fusions, or the Firebolts. And it'll charge up, it'll start to glow white. Once it glows white, you can throw it at the ground or at an ally, and it will heal and give them an overshield if they are at full health. I think if they're not at full health, it still gives them the overshield. Which is huge because you can use it to even heal yourself. And if your ally then walks through it, they then proc Benevolent Dawn, which then will heal them. That is the basic tree here with the class. Some things to note if you are watching this video in 6 months, 9 months maybe, depending on when we get Solar 3.0. I would like you to look at the power of both Celestial Fire and Igniting Touch. The powers of those two melees going into the future for Well is incredibly strong, and you will see why when we get into the builds for today's video. Alright, that's the class breakdown. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working on describing some builds to get you off of Phoenix Protocol and why I think Phoenix Protocol is not an S tier exotic anymore. Okay, let's start discussing what you should run. If I personally don't think Phoenix is the right thing to run, let's discuss what I think is. I think there's 4 exotics you should look at, and one that you're going to be confused why you should look at, but then I will show you the build for it. In my opinion, the 4 exotics you should look at are Aeon Souls. I think Aeons are still not getting enough credit. Last week was Lake of Shadows. I ran Lake of Shadows with Aeon Souls. And needed my well 3 times, had my well 3 times. And I run very low intellect. I run like 25, 30 intellect on everything. Next up, I would look at Karnsteins, especially if you're by yourself. The free, just constant health from just any melee kill is ridiculous. You very close to can't die once you proc the kill. It's like having Protective Light, but you're at full health. And if you proc it with a powered melee, which you don't have to, it's any melee kill will do this, but if you proc it with a powered melee, you're going to give yourself that 25 melee damage. I mean, that 15% extra weapon damage for those 10 seconds with the melee. I think in the future, there's things here that could be really amazing with like igniting touch and stuff while still running this class for the super. I know that's why a lot of people like running well is because of this super. And I think in the future there could be some serious potential here. I think the next exotic we should all look at is Sunbracers. The clip at the beginning, where I basically got 3/4 of my super back, I got my entire super back before my well ended, was because of Sunbracers. I will break down that build at the end of the video and explain what's going on, show you how that all happened. But I do think Sunbracers are the frontier of well going forward into Witch Queen, and we should all be looking at them, especially in Solar 3.0 if we can run Celestial Fire with well. We are in for some crazy build potential. because you can proc it from a mile away and be able to proc the Sunbracers perk from a mile away instead of having to be on top of enemies. Lastly, there is some other exotics I think y'all should take a look at, but aren't necessarily, in my opinion, S tier. I think if you're solely looking for super regeneration, I think Mantle Battle Harmony now is probably better. Especially if you run solar primaries. I think Mantle Battle Harmony is probably the better overall class. I mean, the better overall exotic right now in that spot if you're still trying to run a chess piece. Because it's just going to give you more super energy for what you're already doing, which is dealing primary damage. But when you get those kills, it'll give you more super energy because of how that exotic works. I think you should also look at Starfire Protocol. The 2 fusion grenades, now with the fusion grenade buff in PvE, is really strong, actually. And you get 2 of them, and you can give them back to yourself. You can heal your allies with them. It's a really good support exotic for certain healing purposes with the Overshield grenade. Lastly, there's 2 boots. One everybody should know about. If you're on well, you should have Lunafactions ready. In endgame content, Lunafactions are like top 3-4 exotics in the game because of the reload speed they give you, especially if you have to do DPS. If you go in a day 1 raid and you don't have Lunafactions on your Warlock, you're basically throwing. Because you're going to need the reload speed, because you're going to need to have extra damage output like that in a day 1 scenario where you're under light. And the last boot exotic I want to go over is the Boots of the Assembler. There is situations where I think this exotic can be S tier on Warlock. I don't think it's immediately obvious how good this exotic is. It's definitely an exotic that excels when you have the most amount of teammates around possible, so in like a raid situation. But I think it is also something to look at when you are looking at your potential exotics while on well and processing what you should run over Phoenix Protocol. Alright, well, I'm sure all of you remember that clip from the beginning of the video. I think it's time I actually explained what was happening there. Alright, now let's break down this, what I think is now the exotic and build to run on Well of Radiance going into Witch Queen. We're first going to start with the exotic. I am running Sunbracers. I know that maybe not everybody who is necessarily new to the game understands what these exotic do and understand why I am running them. So the duration of solar grenades is basically doubled. And solar grenades already got a slight duration buff and a 15% damage buff. When they were added, when the 30th anniversary patch went through. I am running on them a melee kickstart and a elemental time dilation. This will come into play in just a minute when I break down the rest of this. But this is how I would have these built. The melee kickstart is simply a helpful thing, not a necessary thing. You don't need grenade kickstart, as you can probably see by the video, and also, if you don't know, when you get a forward melee kill with these exotics on, you get 4 seconds of infinite solar grenades. Quite literally infinite solar grenades. As many as you can throw in that 4 seconds, the game will let you throw. And you don't need grenade kickstart because you're only using your grenade for that reason. And if you do use your grenade for not that reason, you're just throwing your grenade for like damage or for healing yourself. Which in that case, you don't need your grenade because remember, you're on well and you have Benevolent Dawn to help get your Grenade and Rift and melee back. Next up, we're going to go to the helmet. I have the helmet here on Solar, and the reason for that is what breaks this build. What breaks this build is Ashes to Asset. You gain super energy every time your grenade gets a kill. And that grenade kill gives, as you can see from the video, a significant portion of your grenade. Here on this build, I am running 2 copies of it, and then an explosive well maker. This is because every about third kill my grenade gets, I will get 2 Solar Elemental Wells to spawn because I have Bountiful Well later on in the build. And that will help me get my grenade and give me Well of Life, as you will see throughout the rest of the build. That is basically all for the helmets. Next, we're going to go down to our chest piece here. Our chest piece has Well of Life on it. It's mostly open besides Well of Life, because if you can get an Artifice piece from the new Master Dungeon from Grasp of Avarice, you have plenty of space here to throw on whatever you need to throw on. For instance, if I had an Artifice piece that had a very similar distribution to this right here, I could run like Sniper Concussive Dampener, which would only be 2 more points, right? And then I would still have another 7 points. No, 6 points open to me. So I could run, a Rocket Reserves. I could run a Fusion Reserves. I could run a Linear Fusion Reserves. I could run a Sword Reserves. All those things are open to me because of how the build is built. And if I want to run Solar Resistance and a melee damage resistance, or like a Solar and Concussive Dampener, which is what I usually run when I'm doing something like Prophecy. Because the thing that kills you most if you're like a solo Prophecy situation is the Solar Fire from the Knights. Obviously, if you need to put a stat mod on your chest piece, you have that spot open as well. You can go as far as putting an intellect piece on. With an Artifice piece, you could run like a Concussive Dampener, Solar Resistance. You could run a small intellect mod, and then you'd still have enough space for, a reserve mod somewhere. You still have plenty of space for another reserve mod on the piece, if you wanted to boost up your intellect a little bit. Next, we go down to our boots. This was something I go over in another video, but boots should generally be solar. Generally. Outside of maybe PvP. PvP is where I could say maybe go Arc. Arc for different mods and stuff that help with stat distributions inside of PvP. But here in PvE, I'm going to say solar 99.9% of the time because of recuperation. Recuperation is a hugely underrated perk in regular content and endgame content. With the way this armor is currently spec'd, I have enough space to throw on a couple different scabs. Remember, every season there's always going to be a scab that costs 1 point. I have Sword Scab unlocked, so right now I can run a Sword Scavenger. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, if we go over to the artifact here, there's the 3-cost Fusion Scab, which is Fusion and Linear Fusion. So if I had that unlocked, I have space on here for it. If I wanted to, something I could do is take off the Recov mod here. I have enough space on my chest piece, and then I could run any scab I wanted. Because it would leave me with 7 spots open, so I could run any of these scabs and have plenty of space for them. Lastly, we go down to our class height. A bond, since we're on Warlock. I have a Well of Ordnance on here. The choices you need to make with this build is whether you run 2 copies of Well of Ordnance or you run a copy of Well of Ordnance and a copy of Well of Life. If you run 2 copies of Well of Ordnance, I would take the Elemental Time Dilation off and either run a Font of Wisdom or run an Elemental Ordnance, or you could go an Elemental Armaments or a Font of Might. Font of Wisdom is severely underrated, but if you're running double Well of Ordnance, you don't need the Elemental Time Dilation because you aren't running the Well of Life, which this will boost Well of Life, which is a very good mod for keeping you alive. I would say it's probably up there with Protective Light right now. Lastly on the bond, right now, I'm obviously running Particle Deconstruction because we're in a Particle Deconstruction season, so Particle Deconstruction is going to be on the class item for right now. If you're not in a Particle Deconstruction season, and say, in which we don't have a rocket debuff, like they're saying we're not going to go back to having these style of mods where they just lock in your class item, then obviously you have space for other things here. If you wanted to, you could go with Distribution. I don't know how often most people place their rifts near enemies. If not, you can just go double Bomber, which will help get your grenade back. And then obviously, if you take off Particle Deconstruction, you have space here on the bond for any stat boosting mod that you might need in order to get the preferred stat distribution, which would be 100-100. The reason my character's not at 100-100 right now is because these 2 pieces are not masterworked. If I had the materials, but I'm a broke soul who does videos, and so I burn all my masterwork materials instantly. And so that's why these aren't masterwork. But this, in my opinion, is the best build for Well Warlocks heading into 2022. Alright, everybody. That's it for this video. I hope you guys have learned something about Attunement of Grace or Well of Ordnance as we know it in game. I hope that you are more open to other options on the class that aren't Phoenix Protocol. I hope that what you're seeing in front of you right now and what that clip at the beginning proved to you that there is other options on Well that aren't Phoenix Protocol that create just as much super uptime, just as much healing uptime. And there are ways to run Well in situations that most people would call for Phoenix that gives you your super just as often as having a Phoenix Protocol would. If not, maybe even a little faster. Especially in endgame content. So, I hope everybody has enjoyed. I'm going to let the rest of this Disgraced play out. So y'all can watch the rotation through the supers and how I use the Sunbracers here to get my super back. I hope everybody has enjoyed. If you don't mind, please leave a like and please do subscribe if you're watching the video. And don't forget to turn on those notifications if you do subscribe so you can see more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I hope everybody has enjoyed, and I will see all of you on Friday for a brand new video. Thank you, everybody, and I'm going to let it play out and play a little bit of music to close this out. Alright, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
to send the message, Commander.
Excellent work. Return to the tower.